You're tuned in to 99.1 CJAM-FM, broadcasting from the University of Windsor and streaming online 365 days a year at www.cjam.ca. 99.1 CJAM-FM, a campus community radio station. Your home for melodic heavy metal. Playing it heavier, louder, raunchier, faster. 99.1 CJAM. This is the Signals of Intuition.
99.1 CJAM-FM. You're listening to Signals of Intuition, 2 hours of melodic hard rock and heavy metal coming your way. That was Armored Saint off of their classic album Symbol of Salvation with the tune Rain of Fire. Tonight we got a very special show. We have on Skype right now the bass player of Armored Saint, Fate's Warning. He's been in Anthrax and other things, Joey Vera. He'll be sticking around for the full 2 hours tonight. So, without further ado, Joey, you there, man?
Hello.
Hey, Joey, what's going on?
Not much. How you doing, Brandon?
Oh, not too bad.
Good.
Just been running around like crazy for the last 5 minutes, but everything looks like it's in order.
Good.
So you want to just dive right in?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. First off, this is sort of the traditional question. Can you introduce yourself and tell listeners who you are and what projects you've been involved in over the years?
Ooh.
Just a brief rundown.
Yeah. Well, my name is Joey Vera, bass player. My first band is Armored Saint. Started with them back in 1982, very long ago. I'm also a member of Fate's Warning, and I've played with a lot of different bands for various different reasons and occasions and lengths of time, such as Tribe After Tribe, Anthrax, OSI, Seven Witches, to name a couple.
Weren't you in Engine too?
I was also in Engine. I also work as an engineer and a producer, and I've worked with a lot of different bands in that capacity as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of different stuff. Try to keep busy.
How was Armored Saint formed, and what can you tell us about the band's early years?
Well, I've known a couple of the guys for a very long time. Gonzo and John, I've known since we were in the 3rd or 4th grade.
Oh, wow.
So we've known each other a very long time. We've become sort of like best friends right around 7th grade. And so we've been pretty tight since a long time. And the Armored Saint kind of came out of this friendship because during junior high school and high school, in a couple of different situations, we had played together, sort of like, grew up listening to the same bands and picking up instruments. And Phil Sandoval, too, obviously is Gonzo's brother, so we've known him a long time also, even though he was a year ahead of us. But Armored Saint came to form after high school in 1981 is when the band started out jamming with Dave Pritchard and a couple of the guys, and then John got involved, and then I was the last one to get involved in early 82.
Oh, okay.
So we've been together it was within the first year of us graduating high school, and we about a year later, less than about a year and a half later, we had secured a major label contract with Chrysalis, and then we released 3 records with Chrysalis during the early 80s, and then since then we got dropped, and then we went to Metal Blade and released a live EP, and then we did a record with them in early '92, Symbol of Salvation.
Mm-hmm. I've heard stories about how in the 80s Chrysalis had one hell of a time trying to market you guys because you weren't exactly Metallica, nor were you Motley Crue.
Yeah, it was a weird time. I mean, it was a great time to be in LA because it was a lot of things were happening, and in the early 80s this metal thing was brand new here in the U.S., so it was a pretty exciting place to be. Everybody got signed. We were one of them. Chrysalis signed us, and we were stoked because we were kind of fans of the label. We were big fans of a lot of their bands on their roster, such as Jethro Tull, Robin Trower, UFO.
Oh, there you go.
You know, bands like that. So we were huge fans of that music, and so to be on that label for us was like we were totally stoked. But the thing that the thing that sort of changed was that we realized that all those bands were European signing bands, and the only things that were really going on the U.S. side at that time in the mid-'80s, like around 84, 85, 86, was Huey Lewis and the News, Pat Benatar, Spandau Ballet, Billy Idol, a lot of pop music. So we were like the only band on the label that was a heavy metal band. And I think that they thought when they first signed us that we could be their next Def Leppard. We were young, we had a lot of energy. We had catchy tunes on the first record, and so they just thought that they were going to form us into this what I think was going to be ideal for them, and it ended up being where we kind of had other ideas. We wanted to be more like the bands that we were listening to at the time, which was more new wave of British heavy metal, Def Leppard included, but even more so. More of the
like on Through the Night and that sort of era.
Yeah, the first record or so. But at that point, they were like onto Pyromania. So the label was like trying to make us something we weren't, and we wanted to be a grassroots band. We wanted to go on the road. We wanted to tour, especially tour Europe. But those are things that they didn't support. They were of the mind of, well, no, you gotta work radio and you gotta work retail, But
yeah,
this is where the beginning of the end was, because we didn't see eye to eye on this from the beginning, really.
You guys got started with your first, I think, big hit was "Can You Deliver," correct?
Well, that was our first record, and like I said, this was something that we kind of came out of the box with, and it got a lot of attention because, like I said, it was early 1984, so it was early, and it was like a lot of stuff happening at the time, and so we got a lot of attention because we were one of the bands that was coming out at the time.
Yeah.
And we also did a great tour on that album. We were out with Quiet Riot and Whitesnake.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we were playing huge arenas, and it was awesome for us, So, that record and that song got a lot of attention. We had a video for that song as well, and that got a lot of airplay. So, yeah, that was it was kind of like one of those things that was kind of the right time, right place. So that's why it did pretty well.
Well, yeah, at that time, you had like Accept coming out, and I guess Metallica was just starting to, come up through the ranks, and Queensryche and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, at the time it was an interesting time because, when we first started out in '82 and the first couple of years of doing this, heavy metal at the time was such a broad stroke. It was sort of a one genre, but by 85, 86, it really started to change, and it started to splinter, and you started to have the thrash movement was becoming much more popular, and so these got the splinter of the fans. They started to separate and have allegiance to one side or the other, not so much for both. So you would see the fans the fans that were supportive of heavier music were less likely to support bands that were on the other side. And you mentioned Motley Crue earlier, and later hair band metal. And it was the same was true for the other side. All the fans of Rat and Wasp and Motley Crue were less likely to be fans of Exodus and Metallica and Slayer, Anthrax, whatever, Megadeth. So it was kind of a bummer in a way, because in the beginning it was better because it was more like, hey, if you were into metal, you were into metal. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
But it affected our band a lot because we got stuck in the middle. We had something in common kind of with both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So for the heavier side of the crowds, a lot of them were turned off by us because at the time we had this image of wearing armor on stage and this costume thing.
Yeah.
And that turned people off. They assumed that we were a glam band because of this. On the other side, with the lighter side, or the Motley Crue fans, let's say, we were too heavy for them. We weren't catchy enough. We didn't have the sort of the style of songwriting that appealed to them. In our live shows,
no spandex.
No spandex. And although our live shows were just like way too energetic for them. I mean, we had more in common kind of with the thrash side than we did the other side, but
yeah,
it added to a lot of confusion, and that's something that was really a thorn in our side pretty much throughout the whole 80s, to be honest with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then, so what can you tell us about the build up to and recording of Symbol of Salvation? Obviously, by that time, a lot had changed in the band.
Yeah, well, the biggest change for us at the time was we were without a label, and then we had learned that our main songwriter, main lead guitar player, and dear friend Dave Pritchard contracted or had found out that he had leukemia, and so he went in for an operation and did not survive a bone marrow transplant, and that was very devastating for the band. And after that all happened, we had to regroup and figure out what we were going to do. And the thing was from the time of like 1988 until 1991, we were writing with Dave, and we wrote probably about 26 songs or something. And
oh, wow.
We were having trouble none of the labels would bite, because at this point, you've got to remember that heavy metal was on the way out.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for us to try to get anybody to put this out. And it wasn't until after Dave passed away that we regrouped, and we got Jeff Duncan and Phil Sandoval back in the band. And Metal Blade Records came to us and said, hey, we've always been fans of you guys, and we don't want this music to go to waste, so we want to do this record with you. So we accepted their offer, and we made the record Symbol of Salvation for Metal Blade, and it ended up being a great record and a good kind of it's been sort of a measuring stick for us, for a lot of fans.
Yep.
That record has.
What I've sort of read passages about this, but I don't know the full story. How you guys lifted one of Dave's solo demos to be on Tainted Past?
Yeah, that's true. We were doing the song Tainted Past, and I thought it would be a cool idea to have Dave literally be a part of the record somehow. And what we would do is, working with Dave, and the way that we worked back then was we would always go into rehearsal and record. We'd write new songs, and then we would record them on a 4-track tape recorder, basically.
Yeah.
And so it was from this 4-track that we lifted the solo, and it was kind of a painstaking process because this is before computers, before digital, before Pro Tools or any of this stuff. So we had to do it manually with tape, literally taking phrase by phrase and making it fit in, because you're talking about trying to merge two different performances at different tempos, and it was a little bit tricky, but I think we pulled it off, and it was really cool when we did.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it sort of throws you off even listening because the sound is a bit different. But once it sort of hits you, oh wow, this is really him,
Yeah, exactly. And he has such a unique way of playing that it was a shame. I mean, the album really missed his playing, because his style is so unique. So
yeah,
at least we got him to do one solo,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how long, did that take? A couple of days to do? I would imagine back then it would have taken forever, eh?
Not a couple of days, but it did take a whole night. One night we did it at the end of a session, and it probably took about 4 hours or so.
Oh, wow.
And 4 hours is a long time to splice together. It's literally like a 30-minute section.
Yeah.
I mean, a 30-second section. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You think now it would take, about 30 seconds to do? Maybe a couple minutes?
It would take a couple minutes. With computers, with Pro Tools, it would be nothing now. But You know, it was cool. I remember the whole process. We stayed up late and we're drinking beer, and when we finished it, we all just, give each other hugs. It was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And once you guys toured, well, did you guys tour much for Symbol?
We did. We did some touring, not a whole lot. We did a tour with Suicidal Tendencies.
Oh, okay.
We did some dates with Ted Nugent. We also did a tour with the Scorpions in Europe.
Oh, nice.
They were all short tours, but we did a bunch. And then we also toured with, the longest tour we did was with Wrathchild America.
Oh, cool.
And that was like, I don't know, that was about 4 or 5 weeks.
Were you guys headliners on that?
No, we supported them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then, wasn't it about this time that John decided to leave? Or had he sort of already been through the...
Well, it was right after the Symbol. After the last tour we did with them, was with Scorpions. And then we came back from that tour and we did 2 shows in Hawaii with Overkill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we flew out to Hawaii, and then it was literally like the day we were leaving or something that John got a call from Anthrax. And at the time, Armored Saint was not doing so good because the label told us that Symbol was done, go back and start writing the next record, and we were all disappointed with, we wanted to do more touring, we wanted to get more out of the record, but we were fighting an uphill battle basically because grunge was becoming very popular, and it was impossible for us to, even though the only bright light of the whole thing was that our video for Rain of Fire got tons of airplay. It was doing great, but then Headbangers Ball got removed from the airwaves for the umpteenth time. Yeah. And then that was our last outlet, so it was just done after that. And
did Last Train Home get a lot of airplay too?
Not as much as Rain. Rain was like the #1 head crusher or whatever it was called. Like the video of the week. Mm-hmm. It was literally for like 6 weeks in a row. It was great, but it was on their regular playlist for about 16 weeks.
Oh, that's great.
So it was really long run, and Last Train maybe got 4 weeks total. So it didn't do as well.
I remember seeing that on VH1 Classic a couple of years ago and went, I didn't even know you guys made a video for that. So
yeah, it wasn't as good of a video. Rain of Fire was a much better video.
Yeah, oh for sure. And so John obviously took the gig and
so John at the time the band was kind of frustrated and we were arguing amongst ourselves, and we just sort of felt like we had, after Dave passed away, we felt like we were thrown onto the ground, and then we rose up and climbed Mount Everest, and then got to the top, and then only to be let down again. And we just felt like at that point the band had been together for like 10 or 11 years, and we just didn't think we had it in us to just do make a follow-up to Symbol. So we were just like, God, what are we going to do? And it was just kind of a strange place to be. None of us were very happy at all.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so this phone call came to John kind of in perfect timing, and for him and maybe for the band to take this opportunity, which he ended up doing. And that was when Armored Saint officially disbanded, was in the spring of '92.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
And with songs like Tribal Dance, it's about the Colombian drug war, are you very political, or anyone else in the band?
Not really.
Or was it just sort of an off-the-cuff sort of thing?
Not really, yeah. I mean, all of our things that have ever been about anything that seems political is really more social than it is political.
Oh, okay.
And it's more about things that have come up that come up out of reading the newspaper or things that are happening in the news on television or something. We've never really written in a way where we had some kind of commentary that we were sort of being judgmental on or taking sides on. It was more a way, we would do it more in a way where we would sort of present a situation or something going on in the world so that people are more aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we still do that. We're never really been one to be too preachy.
Yeah, so you guys don't take the sort of Megadeth approach then, eh?
I don't know. I mean, I can't really say what Dave's intentions are, but I just know that our intentions were never been one to be too specific about what side we're taking, and also voicing our opinion on what you should think of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So right now we got to go to commercial break, but why don't you pick two Armored Saint songs? How about a new one and a classic one?
Sure. I'm gonna pick La Raza, and I'll pick classic. How classic do you want to get?
Revelation and before that.
How about Tainted Past, since we talked about Tainted Past?
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, since we talked about it, I guess let's start things off right now with Tainted Past, and we'll be back with more Joey Vera after this. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's Armored Saint off their latest record, the title track called La Raza. Tonight on the Signals of Intuition, have the bass player of that band, Joey Vera, on the line. We just finished talking about the classic era of Armored Saint, up to about Symbol of Salvation. What caused the band to reform in 2000 when you guys came back with Revelation?
Well, this real spark for that was that Anthrax was taking a hiatus to do the SOD thing. So Charlie and Scott went off and did this SOD record and a tour. So the band was basically had nothing to do. And it just so happened that I also had downtime from Fate's Warning. So it was just sort of a coincidence that happened at the same time. And I had written, I don't know, 2 or 3 songs that I showed to John, and I said, hey, check these out. You want to maybe work on some stuff? And we got it together and said, hey, maybe we should think about doing an Armored Saint record right now. It might be kind of cool. We have some downtime, and that was sort of the start of it. And a lot of it came from, the inspiration also came from touring around the world. Like, I was touring out with Fate's Warning. I had toured Europe a couple times with them during the mid to late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and John was on tour with Anthrax for that whole time. And during that whole time, like, in our minds, Armored Saint was just done.
Yeah.
But we were, as our travels through with these other bands, we would meet a lot of fans. People would come up with LPs and tons of Armored Saint stuff, Armored Saint fans wanting us to autograph things, and a lot of people asking, why don't you get back together? You have to get back together and do something in the future. And we just thought, like, we just didn't believe that there was any kind of a demand for it, but there was, we thought. So
Mm-hmm.
that was, those two things combined is what led us to get back together. And then we wrote a couple of songs, and we had some songs that never got used from the Symbol era.
Well, one of which was Den of Thieves, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was one of them. Exactly. And we approached Metal Blade, and they were like completely into it. And, we got back together and we did it. And the whole thing we kind of shook hands on was that we said to each other, look, John's not quitting Anthrax. I'm not quitting Fate's Warning. We're not going to make this like where we left off. We're going to do this because we have some time to do it, because we have some motivation to do it, and let's just have fun with it.
Yeah.
And those are those 3 things we said be the criteria for us to move forward and make the record. And so we did, and we even did a couple of short tours for it, and we had a great time because there was no pressure about, like, how well is the record selling, or
Yeah.
what's going on at radio, or the manager's pissed off because this isn't happening or that, and none of that stuff mattered. So it was a really stress-free situation. And the same is true for why we got back together now for La Raza. We're working under these same conditions, and so this is why we're able to do this, and why we still find it enjoyable to do it, because this isn't a make or break situation for us. There's not so much writing on it.
Yeah. So it's just basically for fun, because you guys can do it, you'll do it.
Yeah, it's, for lack of a better explanation, I've said this before, that for all intents and purposes, we basically have abandoned our career back in 1992. So that means that we're not obliged to hop in a van and do whatever's necessary in order to sell records to justify us making a record, or to, do whatever it takes to promote it, and to, the things that you do when you're in a band, when that's your only livelihood. And granted, we did that. I mean, we did that for many years, and we just can't work under those conditions anymore, not with this band, because we've already done it, and we don't feel the need to try to recapture all of that and try to, we're just basically, we're too old to try to redo that. We've lost too much ground, and we'll never catch up to, the Megadeths and the Anthraxes and the Metallicas or whatever,
Yeah.
There's no
fair
way.
enough.
There's just no way. So the only reason that we can do this is that if we can find the time to do it, work it within our lives, and also have a really good time with it. And I have to say that we're very fortunate to be able to do this, because I know that a lot of bands would like to do this, but they can't.
Yeah.
But we're very, very lucky in the fact that we have two things. One thing is that we have a label that is allowing us to work in this capacity. Metal Blade has always been a fan of ours since day one. So they still are supportive in us, and they know what this is. They know that we're not going to go out and conquer the world and, tour extensively, and try to do whatever is necessary to succeed and, sell as many records as possible. They understand this, and they are allowing us to make the kind of music and the kind of records we want to do and work in the capacity we want to work. The other half is that we're also blessed that we have so many loyal fans that are willing to wait 10 years between records. And after that amount of time, and after all this downtime, and the fact that we're not a regularly working band, they are still curious to come and hear what we're doing. And to me, this is the best thing ever. I mean, it's like people ask me about, like, do you have any regrets because you're not more successful? But I always say to them, I've been doing this almost 30 years, and it's crazy to me to think that. But the fact that I can even do this 28 years after the first record came out, it's amazing to me. I mean, to me, that is success. I am successful.
Yeah.
I have been. There's been ups and downs, but that's life. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I mean, the fact that we put a record out now, and it seems like it's hit a chord with a lot of people. I don't know if I try not to read the reviews because I don't want to be biased, but it seems like it's struck a really good chord with a lot of people, and to me, that's great. We're still able to touch people after not having a studio release in 10 years, and to me, that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so in between that, you guys did the Nod to the Old School compilation. How did that come about? Like, did you guys have a lot of say in that, or was that just sort of a label thing?
No, I mean, they wanted to do something, relatively soon after Revelation, and this was basically the only thing we could accommodate with. But we thought it would be something fun just for the diehards. I mean, we weren't setting out to try to reach any new people with this. I mean, this was really for the committed,
Yeah.
And we just wanted to have fun with it. It was something that was sort of frivolous on one hand, and also really informative on another. It had some old stuff and some stuff that maybe a lot of people had never heard before. And it was kind of done in a lighthearted way. Our band has had a tendency to take ourselves a little bit too seriously. So this was a way for us to kind of shake that loose and have fun and do something a little bit silly and,
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, do you guys have any plans to tour in support of La Raza?
No plans to tour, really. We had hoped to do some festivals in the summer, but the timing didn't quite work out because John had some priorities and some commitments he had made to do some live shows with Anthrax,
Yeah.
And so we had to pass up a couple of things, but we are playing. The only show we're playing is at the end of this month. We're playing at House of Blues here in Los Angeles on May 28th, and that's really the only show we have booked for the year. But I mean, we may try to do something in the fall or the winter if something came up and we could fit something in. But like I said before, any sign of like a long tour is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that if something short came up that we could work within our schedules and our lives, that we would probably do it. But at this time,
Do you guys play the festivals fairly regularly over in Europe?
I wouldn't say that regularly, but over the last 10 years, we've done Bang Your Head twice. We did Wacken once. We played. Oh man, we did a festival in Italy.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so we've done a few over the years. We just toured Australia last year. So we did a tour of the UK last summer as well. 2 summers ago, sorry. We played the Belgium festival, Grass Pop. So we've done. We do stuff.
Yeah. So
we were kind of we're doing stuff almost like once a year actually. But if we could fit it in, we would do something.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Well, that's still pretty amazing though, considering you're sort of a band and not a band at the same time, and that you guys still make time to get a couple dates in every year.
Yeah, and like I said, it amazes me that we can still get shows like that anybody cares.
Do you think Armored Saint will ever do a live record or like a live DVD or something like that?
Well, we've actually talked about that. I mean, I think that the only way it would really work is if we did we were able to do a live tour that was of any kind of length, meaning that it was more than a couple of days. We'd have to do something that was at least 5 or 10 shows.
Yeah.
And it would also have to be in venues that would accommodate something like that. We've talked about it. We were going to do it on our UK tour, but a lot of the venues didn't lend themselves to having cameras and stuff like that. A lot of the venues were actually kind of on the small side.
Yeah.
So we had to scrap that idea. But yeah, if something came up, we've definitely talked about it. But we want it to be a quality thing and want it to be good. So the only way for us to really do that is to capture more than a couple of performances, so that we can capture the best performances and recordings of the night without having to go in and fix anything and try to salvage stuff that went wrong with the recording or with the lights or with us, or, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I hope so. We've always talked about it. We just haven't found the right situation yet. But it is something we'd like to do, mostly because Armored Saint has been known to be a good live band, and I think I would like to present that in a way where that actually comes across.
Yeah. Growing up, who were some of your major influences?
Well, started out early on. Started out with I was way into bands like Queen and Thin Lizzy and Kiss and Black Sabbath, UFO, Judas Priest, Scorpions. Then I got into other stuff. New Wave of British heavy metal became big. Motorhead.
Yeah.
Early Def Leppard, Saxon, early Iron Maiden. Stuff like that.
Yeah. And then how did you get started as a musician, or sort of what sort of propelled you to pick up the bass?
Well, originally it was the tennis rackets in front of the mirror, of course, and that was all due to Kiss, basically. I was a big fan of the first Kiss Alive record.
Oh, same here.
Yeah, it was great. And so that was kind of probably the start of it. And I originally picked up guitar. I wanted to be a guitar player. And so I played guitar for a little while. And then it wasn't until I kind of fell into bass by default when we were starting a band it was me and John and his next door neighbor and a couple other guys. And his next door neighbor played guitar, but he was a much better guitar player than I was. and we didn't have a bass player. At the time, John thought he wanted to be a bass player singer, like kind of like Geddy Lee sort of guy. But
Yeah.
he quickly realized that he didn't have the aptitude to play bass at all, even without singing. So he bought this 1972 Fender P bass at the local music store, and it was a beautiful Sunburst P bass. And he played it for about a month, and then he put it under his bed, and it was just sitting there collecting dust. And so after like a couple of months of this, and at the same time us trying to form this band, one day his guitar player said, why don't you just, just so we can jam, why don't you play John's bass? It's under his bed. And, then we could at least practice,
Yeah.
with bass, having bass in the music. And so I said, all right, I'll try it. So pulled it out. And right away, I think because I had already been playing guitar, it just, and I had only been playing for maybe 2 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And so I picked it up, and then it just fell right into my hands, and it was like, wow, okay, this is me.
Yeah.
And so after playing John's bass for about a year, I bought it from him, and bought it for $200, and that was my first P bass that I bought, and I used it in everything I did up until about 1996 when I retired it, and I still have it here, but it only stays in LA. I only use it for studio work, but it's an amazing guitar.
It must have a pretty good tone to it then, eh?
It sounds amazing. It's got like 20 some years of cigarette smoke and beer stains. It sounds amazing.
Only thickens the sound.
And sweat.
Okay, Joey. Well, let's take a break right now. Let's fire off a Fates Warning tune and a brand new Armored Saint tune.
All right.
What do you want to do? What do you want to hear from Fates Warning?
Let's do Apsog Part 11.
Okay. And new Armored Saint.
And I'm gonna pick Left Hook.
All right. So here's one of my favorites. Left Hook from right field. This is from the new Armored Saint La Raza, and we'll be back with more Joey Vera on 99.1 CJAM-FM. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's Fates Warning with A Pleasant Shade of Grey Part 11. That's off of their Pleasant Shade of Grey single-song album. Before that in the set, we had brand new Armored Saint with Left Hook from right field. And on the line right now is the bass player of both Fates Warning and Armored Saint, Joey Vera. Spent the last hour or so talking about Armored Saint, the classic era, the new stuff, what he's been up to lately. Right now, let's switch gears now and go into one of my all-time favorite bands, Fates Warning. And then, so you joined Fates Warning in the mid-'90s. How did that gig come about?
Yeah, I got together with them in 1996 to make their A Pleasant Shade of Grey record. I had been friends with them for a very long time because we were label mates in the very beginning, in early '83. We had both been associated with Metal Blade, and so I had known them for a very long time, and so we just kind of remained friends, and had a lot in common and stuff. And I got to play with them once. It was about 1989-90. When they were on tour and their bass player had a family emergency he had to go home to. So rather than cancel like 3 or 4 shows, they called me like on a Thursday and they said, hey, can you be here Saturday?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, whoa, sure. So I got the set list, and then I woodshedded for like a day, and then a day later I was on the plane. And I basically had to learn, and I don't know how familiar you are with the old Fates Warning stuff, but it ain't exactly like AC/DC tunes.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So it was pretty hard thing to do. I got there, they picked me up at the airport, and like from the minute I got there, I was in the back of the bus with Arch-Matheos, going over every song, taking down notes, and I had to do a show that night. So it was crazy. It was so crazy. But
that's pretty intense.
But I pulled it off. I mean, I made a few boo-boos here and there, but at least I got through a whole set. And then I did 2 more shows after that, and by the last show I did pretty well and everything. So it was kind of like a boot camp thing with them, and it was a good time. I have a great time with those guys. We're great friends and stuff. So when 1996 came around, the bass player decided that he wasn't able to be in the band anymore. He couldn't. He had a family with kids, and he had a regular day job, and it was too hard for him to be away from all of those things. So he decided that it would be best for him and his life and his family to step out of the band.
Yeah.
So once he did that, I was the first one that they called because we're just such good friends that they said, would you be considered doing this? And I said, yeah, it'd be great. So that's when I got involved with them, and it's a good time with those guys. Actually, they're some really good buddies of mine.
And then, so were you, for A Pleasant Shade of Grey, were you brought on to? Did you have like any creative input in the whole writing of that album, or were you just sort of a hired gun at that point?
No, I mean, for all intents and purposes, and on paper, I kind of am still a hired guy, but they call me the permanent temporary guy, which is kind of what it is. But it's a funny thing with them. I mean, Fates Warning is basically Jim Matheos's baby. It's been his band for years.
Yeah.
But he didn't really start to take charge over it 100% until about A Pleasant Shade of Grey. So everything that he writes and everything, all the music is, it's his vision, and I respect it. And he's a great musician and a great writer, so I have no qualms with going along with the program. He gives me total freedom with my own parts.
Yeah.
With my bass parts. So he'll give me suggestions, but he says, you can fly with it. So even on The Pleasant Shade of Grey, a lot of that stuff is stuff that is mine, but a lot of the stuff is just stuff that he came up with too. And I'm smart enough to know that bass part fits with the part, so I don't feel the need to write my own part just to say that I wrote my own part.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, it's been a little more, ever since APSOG, it's been a lot more, I feel like I'm more a part of the band because they always ask me my opinion on a lot of things, whether it's music or something to do with doing shows, or even things that have to do with slight business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
They always ask me my opinion, and so I have a voice. When they ask for my opinion, I give it to them. So it's a good working relationship.
Very cool. And then how is it working with Terry Brown, the Rush producer, on Disconnected and A Pleasant Shade?
Yeah, Terry's awesome. Terry's an amazing guy and a really, really, really great musician, great engineer, and he's fun to be around with. He's so easy to work with. He's been nothing but pleasurable for me. Unfortunately for me, my time is always short with him. I'm usually only there for maybe about 6 days total.
Yeah.
But he's great. He's awesome. I love Terry. He's funny, and he's got some great old stories. And I always pick his brain about Getty and about the recording the Rush records. And he's classic. He's got some great stories.
Oh yeah, he's definitely been around.
Yep.
And then, did you end up touring with Fates Warning when they went on tour with Queensryche and Dream Theater? And I think that was 2003, I want to say.
Yeah, I did that tour.
Oh, cool. How was that experience?
It was awesome. It was a summer tour. We did a bunch of outdoor sheds. So for us, it was great. We were on great stages in summertime. The weather was great. We got to play for a lot of people, and it was awesome. I'd say the only downside to any of it was that we went on relatively early, sometimes a little too close to doors opening.
Oh, that's not good.
But yeah, that happens when you're an opening band sometimes. Yeah. But other than that, though, we had a lot of great shows and a lot of good fun. The guys in Dream Theater are all super nice guys, and as well as Queensryche. We hung out with the Queensryche guys quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of good times. A lot of crazy times too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, I'll say right now, I met you briefly at Prague Power this year in Atlanta.
Yep.
But I mean, well, I don't expect you to have remembered me. It was the signing day or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Ray for a couple minutes about the FWX record.
Yeah.
And he said that they were recorded very different from the way the other albums were cut. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was that different. It was basically done the same, except that there may have been some things. I think that they may have used. I'm trying to remember if this is correct or not, but I think that they may have used some of the demo sessions as templates for the recording session.
Oh, okay.
In other words, I think that Jim may have used some sequences or parts in songs that were used in the demo, and they were used in the actual recording. And then Mark Zonder came in and was playing to the demo click track and playing along with certain sequences.
Did you and Jim produce that one?
No, I didn't have anything to do with the production on that. I think it's produced by Fates and Terry.
So Terry was involved in that one.
No, you know what? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe Phil Mangiati mixed that. I can't remember. That's a good question.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't really remember exactly what he said, but
it wasn't really that different. I mean, actually, every Fates record I've done has been a little unusual for what I considered the kind of the norm for recording a band. These days. We would, first thing is that the bands, like when I did Apsog, for instance, we were coming up with all of the parts, and we were basically fine-tuning the songs bi-coastally, because Jim lives on the East Coast and Mark Zonder and I live in LA. So Jim would send us tracks, and then we would get these tracks, and then Mark and I would actually record drum parts and bass parts together, and then we would send it back to Jim, and then he would make comments like, okay, I really like the verse part, but the transition into the chorus is weird, try something different, or, the chorus could be more energetic or could move more or whatever. We would and we would go back and forth like this, fine-tuning everything. And we did this for quite a while, like I think at least 4 months or so. And it was an interesting way for me to work, because normally a band gets together and you go to band practice and you go into the same room and you're all there together, and you're doing it that way.
Yeah.
So this was unusual for me, but and then right before we recorded it, then Jim flew out to LA, and then we actually rehearsed as a band and played the songs live for about 2 days, and then we went back and recorded it on the East Coast. And Disconnected and FWX is done basically the same, but again a little bit different, because as technology progressed, and as I got more involved with computers and with using recording technology, and also Jim, it began more of a situation where we could send each other stuff at home. We didn't need to, even Mark and I didn't need to get together,
Yeah.
I would get tracks sent to me to my house, and then I would play my parts at home, and then I'd send Jim an MP3, and then it gets then we approve things that way. So it's always a little bit different.
Yeah. And then, how does Armored Saint do it? Do you guys sort of just get together and write songs and rehearse and stuff, or?
Well, speaking about all this, I took a pretty big cue from Fate's Warning, and I realized that there was a much more. It can be a more efficient and quicker way to write, especially if someone has a vision. And so, we have in the past worked that way, where we would. Everybody lives in LA, so we would get together and we would all play together in LA. But it can be very, very time consuming, and I found that I was writing my best at home when I'm alone. So I basically would write tunes, and to me, they seemed complete, you know.
Yeah.
So the way that it worked this time was even more maybe bizarre to some people, but basically, John and I started writing, and we started making demos basically at my home studio, and these demos are pretty elaborate. They've got elaborate drum programming, and they've got guitar overdubs and solos and background vocals and effects and everything. It's like listening to a finished record kind of.
Yeah.
And I would play all the instruments and do everything. And basically at the end of the day, we had written 10 songs or so, and we just said, well, this is, you know, this is going to be the template for the record. So what happened was the band Armored Saint never got together to rehearse and play these songs, because I figured that the songs are already here. So here you guys go. Everybody learned their parts at home and did it on their own time. And then we used these demos as templates for each song.
So you just basically just recut their part properly to the template.
Exactly.
Then. Okay.
Exactly. The drums were first. We redid the drums, replaced the drums, and he was playing along with the demo. He's playing with, like, you know, demo versions of guitars and vocals and all that.
Yeah.
And once that was done, then we did guitars, and then we did vocals, and then we did leads, and then we did the bass, you know. And through that process, we ended up keeping some demo tracks, because some of the performances, let's say from John's lead vocal parts, were amazing on the demos, and we figured, why are we going to try to redo this when it sounds great already? So
Yeah.
basically we kept a few songs that were lead vocal tracks from the demos, and we did the same thing with all the background vocals and a couple of, like, guitar overdubs. And so in that sense, it's a sort of a hybrid between recording a new record and using some demo tracks. So it's pretty unusual, but I think the end result worked. There's enough live stuff that was put into it in the end that makes it feel very organic, which it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an unusual way to work.
That well, I guess nowadays it's almost becoming commonplace in a way. You know, the idea
Probably
that people,
more, yeah,
you know,
it's definitely becoming more common for sure.
well, because people don't do that. You know, except the only band I can think of off the top of my head who really does the old school, everyone gets in a room sort of deal is Dream Theater. You know, it seems like everybody nowadays sort of, you know, sending each other different tracks and recording at their own house and whatever now.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes it more affordable for sure. It's cheaper to do that too.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, we ended up going the old school route, and when it came time to make the record, we actually did go into a studio, and we did all of the tracking and the mixing in a studio, in the, you know, an old studio with an old analog gear. So we ended up putting this stamp on it that said, you know, this is an old school record. This isn't a record that we made at home and made it perfect, because it's not perfect at all.
Yeah.
So we felt that was important at the end.
Mm-hmm. And a question I completely forgot to ask, but just sort of struck me now. How is it working with Dave Jordan for the Symbol of Salvation album?
Dave's great. He's a true rock and roller. He came in, and his whole cry for us was that we had to make a dangerous record. So he was always pushing us to just keep everything dangerous and loose. And he was awesome. He was a really, really good guy to work with. He understood the dynamics in the band, the personalities, and he allowed, at the time, I became this person who was sort of like the musical director, and he recognized that and was able to take a step back, and he let me run the show on many occasions. He basically let me co-produce the record. So he was a very insightful and very good, very very good at his craft, great engineer, and great producer.
Awesome. With the Parallels reunion tour happening right now, are you still a member of Fate's Warning, or are you sort of in limbo, or do you know what's going on with that? Are you still a member of the band?
No, I'm still a member of the band, and they are they are just doing these handful of dates with conjunction with the reissue of the record, and so they're doing a handful of shows here and there, and they're having a good time with it, and it's I think it's great. It's a great thing for fans and stuff, and it's really cool. But I'm told that we're going to be recording the new record somewhat soon. I don't know when, but I'm going to guess sometime in late summer. But
Oh, cool. So we will hear another Fate's Warning album then.
I think sometime next year it should be out.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I'm supposed to play on it, and also Bobby Drzambak's supposed to play on it.
Oh, so Fate's Warning has sort of moved past Mark Sonder now.
Last I've heard, yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Mark's with them now doing these reunion shows, but I don't know that they've talked about making a record with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even seeing Bobby, I mean, that guy he's a class act,
He's awesome.
Especially, yeah.
He's a great drummer, and he's super fun to hang out with. He's so cool.
Well, we got to go to another commercial break, Joey, but in anticipation of the new Fates Warning stuff, why don't we pick another Fates Warning song that you played on, and then we can go to some of the OSI stuff that you've done, and we can talk about some of the other projects you've been involved in.
Okay.
Okay, so pick one of the Fates Warning songs that you've done.
Let's do Pieces of Me.
Okay, and from OSI?
Let's do Free.
Right on. Okay, let's get things started right now. This is off the Disconnected record. This is Pieces of Me from Fates Warning, and we'll be back with more Joey Vera. Stay tuned. 99.1 CJAM-FM. There's OSI with Free. The bass player of that band, Joey Vera, has been hanging out with us for the last hour and a half. He's promised to be here for the rest of the show. Joey Vera, of course, the bass player in Fates Warning and Armored Saint. He's also done a bunch of other projects like Seven Witches, OSI. He did a solo record. He's played bass in Anthrax. He's done a whole bunch of other bands, and as well, he's a record producer. So let's start talking about some of the other projects you've done, Joey.
Sure.
And I guess let's start with OSI. How did you get involved with the band?
Well, they just basically hired me to play on about half of the record, Free, and so that was kind of an internet record where they were working on the tracks and stuff, and they sent me tracks over the internet, and so I got tracks, and I have my studio here, so I played my parts, sent it back. Internet record.
Yeah. It's one of those, you do it in a week and forget it even happened.
Yeah, I mean, I was done in like 2 days or something.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's just so weird. I get to work sitting in my underwear, so it's cool.
Sometimes those are the funnest records to do.
Yep, exactly.
How was it working when you did Seven Witches? How was it working with Jack Frost and James Rivera? Did you end up flying out there to sort of record with them, or was it another sort of internet project?
No, I ended up going out there. We did it all together out in New Jersey, and those guys are great. I mean, we again have a lot of fun. We're just basically a bunch of goofballs hanging out. So that project is always just really kind of lighthearted and fun. And I mean, it's a lot of work making a record, but at the same time, we find a way to just goof off and have a good time.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And okay, so another jump, since another one-off thing.
Sure.
How is it working with Anthrax? I mean, you only toured briefly, and did that come about through John again?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I mean, my connection with John has always been there, and ever since John joined their band, I became a little closer to the rest of the guys just through association. And when Frank left to do the Helmet thing, their first thought was, what about Joey?
Yeah.
So then John asked me, and I said, well, yeah, I'd be into it. So then I talked to Scott and Charlie, and I said, yeah, sounds great. So I had a blast. I mean, for me, it was incredible. I was with them for a whole year. I toured everywhere. I did the world basically.
Wow.
I did Japan, Australia, South America, all of Europe. I did the U.S. I mean, we did everywhere, and I went to so many places I'd never even been to before, let alone played. And some of the shows were just completely sick. And all the time, over to my left was my best buddy John. So I mean, it was for me, it was nothing but good. I had a great time.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really cool. Where
Yeah.
you remember any good stories or anything like that on that tour? Or?
Well, we had a lot of just crazy nights, but one of them was pretty crazy. Was we played in Chile, and we were supposed to play in Chile, but we got there and it was like this huge thing. The show was sold out. It was going to be completely, totally sick, and the promoter didn't have his shit together, and he didn't have the proper papers from the government. I guess you need to have for security reasons to put on a show.
Yeah.
So the government showed up and shut the show down before it even started. So there was a line around the venue, people waiting to get in, and they sent everybody home. So this was like in the afternoon. We were on our way to sound check, and they said, there is no sound check because there is no gig. We were like, what? Are you kidding me? So we had to have this impromptu news press conference
Yeah.
in the hotel lobby, and like all these newspapers came out and radio, and all these people were there, and we had to make a statement, and we apologized. It wasn't our fault. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew that it wasn't our fault. So that was that. We were totally bummed. Like, we were looking forward to playing the show. It was going to be sick. It was really just, I think it was like 1,500 people, and it was completely sold out, and it was a drag. So we had the night off, nothing to do. So John and Rob Caggiano, guitar player, and I went out to this bar. There was some guys that were locals came and said, hey, you guys should still go out. I know this great rock bar. You guys should come with us. So we said, sure. We went with them. So we get there, and basically the place is filled with people who were going to the show who didn't get to the show, so they went to this bar. So then, 3 guys from Anthrax show up, and it was complete berserk. People were signing stuff and were hanging out with fans, and it was really cool. So then there's like all this gear on stage. There were bands playing, and so they said, hey, if we got a drummer to play with you guys, do you think you could have a jam session? By this point we're just hammered drunk. And we're like, sure, yeah, we should get it. Who's gonna play? So this band shows up with their drums, and they let us use their drums, and we start picking guys out of the audience, like, who plays drums? And a show of hands go up. Okay, you get up here. This guy comes up, and what songs do you know? Okay, AIR, ready? We just start playing all these tunes. We played about 10 songs with about 4 different fans.
That's crazy.
And it was insane. I mean, the crowd was just going completely nuts. There was a mosh pit. It was so much fun.
I'll bet you made a couple people's nights that night, eh?
We made so many people's nights that night. I mean, there's actually a YouTube video of it. If you Google Anthrax, what is it? Anthrax in Chile. I forget what the title is, but just Google Anthrax Chile club show, something like that.
I'll have to check that out for sure.
And you'll see it. It's pretty cool. It was so awesome.
And, are there any new bands today really grabbing your attention?
Not really.
Do you listen to a lot of new stuff, or a lot more of the old school stuff?
I mostly go to the old school stuff, I mean, the only thing that's relatively new, which isn't really new at all, but I listen to a lot of Opeth lately.
Cool.
But I don't really... I'm trying to think. There's not a whole lot of new bands that I listen to, really. There's this band that struck me as being really interesting. They're on Metal Blade. They're called Bison BC.
I've heard of them. I don't know what they sound like, but what are what's their
I believe they're Canadian.
with BC, yeah, they might be.
I think they are, but they're kind of. It's a little bit like Mastodon-ish, kind of,
Cool.
but a little bit like that. Maybe a little more stoner than Mastodon. I love Mastodon, by the way, too. They're a good,
Yeah,
awesome
great
band.
band.
Yeah, I listen to them a lot too.
And then what fan sent this in? What are some of your interests outside of music? You know, are you into sports or reading or anything of that sort?
I mostly enjoy believe it or not, I love entertaining and cooking for people. So we'll have friends come over, and my wife and I do these pretty elaborate, fancy schmancy gourmet meals. So we enjoy doing that quite a bit, hanging out, drinking wine and eating good food. And also, whatever. Yeah, I enjoy just being a homebody. Love hanging out at home with my family and growing my tomatoes in the summer, and I mean, like I said earlier, I do engineering and producing also on the side, so that's something that's kind of separate from me being a musician. I work with a lot of really good bands. I just finished a record for a country rock band called The Cheatin' Kind, and I also work really closely with a band called Mother Superior.
Cool.
Which is an amazing band.
Yep. Well, that was actually a great segue into my next section. How did you initially get involved with doing production?
Well, it's been a process since day one, really. I mean, I started out, being very interested in making my own demos at home, and then that translated into me asking a lot of questions and paying attention to how things work once we were making records, and I've been making records for a long time. So, but I didn't really start cutting my teeth until I think the first record I produced was in the late '80s with a band called MX Machine, and at that point I was kind of an armchair guy where I was just sort of like barking out my opinions.
Yeah.
But I started getting into engineering in the mid '90s. Mark Zonder from Fates Warning used to own a rehearsal studio, and he had a small project recording studio there. So I kind of became the in-house engineer there, and that's really where I got first introduced to working really hands-on with engineering things, like literally from the ground up, plugging mics in, using mic pre's, compressors, and doing all this stuff. And so that's really where it all started. And then just along the way, it's really been for me of a trial and error process of learning things, making mistakes, and learning from them, and asking a lot of questions to all my engineer friends and all the other people I come in contact with. So that's really been it, and it's just something that I've always been interested in, the process of getting from nothing to something.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, but I don't know, it's something that just interested me, and I try to stick with it,
So do you have your own recording studio at home?
I have it's just, for me, it's just kind of a project studio. It's a 12 by 12 room that I use mainly for mixing, but I do tracking here as well. In fact, I did the last Mother Superior record, which isn't out yet, but we did that whole record here. Literally, actually we did drum tracks in a different place, but we did everything else here, all the guitars and vocals and bass and some percussion overdubs, and we did all that stuff here. So I have a pretty decent Pro Tools setup here. You can check out all the specs if anyone's interested at my website, which is just joeyvera.com. You can see what I got here.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna thumb through that after and see all the toys you got on there.
Cool.
So what are some of the other bands you produced?
Oh, well, I've done several Armored Saint things. I've done, I did a thing with, I've mixed a bunch of stuff for Metal Blade, band called Fueled by Fire. I've done a couple of live DVDs for Metal Blade. I produced a couple of records for Seven Witches. I've done some one-off things for a band called Steel Prophet.
Cool. Good band.
Yeah. Band called Power Symphony out of Italy.
Another cool band.
Yeah. I know I'm forgetting somebody. I just looked at my discography yesterday and I can't remember. Again, that's something else that's on my website. I have all my discography, everything I've played on as a bass player, and then everything I've worked on as an engineer. That's the only things that are coming to mind right now.
And how is it having an insider versus outsider view being a producer? You know, for example, when you had Dave Jordan there helping you out produce Symbol versus doing things on your own.
Well, it's a different hat you have to wear, obviously, and it's a little tricky when you're in the band and you're producing it yourself. It gets a little bit nutty sometimes. It's harder to step away and look at things objectively or subjectively, but objectively, I should say. You know, when I'm working solely as a producer and an engineer, it's easier for me to just maintain the one role. I like to think that I have an advantage that I am a musician, because it's easier for me to communicate on a musical level with other musicians when I myself am a musician. So
yeah,
you know, it comes across as being something that's my whole goal is to try to make a comfortable working environment for whoever I'm working with. And I think because I'm on the other side of the coin a lot of times, being a musician, I'm sensitive to how musicians feel, and so it can be a tricky balance to strike, but it's another thing that's a little challenging at times.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So finally, what does the future hold for yourself, and what can we expect next?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that there'll be some live shows sporadically here and there with Armored Saint. You can count on that, and the same should be true for Fate's Warning. I expect a new record next year. Armored Saint is putting together a performance video, a production video for the song Left Hook from Right Field.
Awesome.
In about 3 weeks. So look for that, I think sometime in June to late June. And then I'm supposed to be mixing the new Seven Witches record in the next month or two.
Awesome.
So that's coming up. I'm going to be working on a follow-up to a Chinese Fire Drill solo record. So I have some music already written for that. I want to try to finish that up in the next 12 months. And that is about it for now on the plate.
Okay, cool, man. I'm really looking forward to all that coming up. I want to sincerely thank you for sticking around for the whole show.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But thanks so much for taking out your time to do this.
You got it, man. Thank you.
And now, before you say goodbye, can you pick one final song from anything you've done?
Let's do.
Yeah, it could be anything. Old, new, whatever you think we should finish the show off with.
Let's do Chilled from La Raza.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I really like that song.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
All right, Joey. Well, thank you so much again for taking your time out. It's very much appreciated, and I hope all you listeners out there really enjoyed it.
You got it, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Take care. You too.
Okay, that was Joey Vera of Armored Saint, Fate's Warning, Anthrax, and so much more. We'll definitely be looking up to see what he has coming up in the future. Right now, though, here's Chilled off Armored Saint's latest La Raza.